are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joined with me remotely is Zeeshan.
Yo.
Alright, man, we're getting to the point in the season where it's time to kind of figure out who are going to be our all-stars for this season. Now, granted, this is a very strange season, and we're still unsure if we even are going to have an all-star game or an all-star event. Hopefully not, considering all the safety precautions the NBA should be taking into consideration.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a bit more later.
Yeah, because there's a whole other mess that I'm sure a lot of you know about. But what is going to be happening is the All-Stars are going to be named, so we are going to know what players are going to be All-Stars this season. And we always like to take this opportunity to kind of give our predictions on who we think are going to be All-Stars, who we think are deserving of All-Star nominations, especially first-timers. And, you know, just kind of to see if we're right or not, you know, because I'll say one thing about All-Stars, that All-Star picking that I hate, is I hate the fan vote, which
Facts.
is going on right now. The fan vote is probably the dumbest vote I think I've seen, just based on the fact that there's so many casuals. And again, I don't mind, you know, new fans getting into basketball, but casuals...
When they can make an imprint on the NBA, it can kind of be bad. And this is why the NBA had to create the Zaza Pachulia rule, right? Remember the year where Zaza Pachulia almost got into the All-Star game, right? And so the NBA had to reduce the fans' vote to, was it 50%, I think, right, of the starters?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to reduce that further.
Maybe. But yeah, I get it from both points of view. Like, you know, the All-Star game is for the fans. But at the same time, a lot of guys have a lot of stuff riding on it, right? Bonuses, legacy points, whatnot, all of that, you know, all that good stuff. So, you know, it's, and especially I think from a lot of like basketball, like real basketball point of view, a lot of people hate it when, yeah, like for example, Zaza Pachulia almost made it, right? So, I mean, I think it's you know, it's a flippy situation, I think, right?
Bro,
so
wasn't Taco Fall and like Alex Caruso like in the running like a year or two ago?
Yep. They almost got in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy, man. The All-Star game is like it's a highly contested topic every single year. I think the interesting dynamic too, before we get started on this, is the fact of, you know, you can see the difference between what the fans value and what the coaches value, because of the fact that a majority of the starters picks are decided by the fans, right? As I said, 50%. Whereas the bench is all decided by the coaches, right? Yeah. So you kind of see if players get screwed over by the fans pick, at least they have some semblance of, you know, relief because of the fact that the coaches are going to pick the bench. Because if you had the fans pick the bench, oh Lord, bro, everything would be messed up, bro. I think then you would have a real issue. But yeah, the fans are only limited to the starters.
Yeah, and the good news is, at least in this whole podcast universe that we have created, we get to pick the All-Stars, and we're gonna, you know, kind of break down our picks for the starters and the reserves for both conferences. So in this episode, we're going to be getting started with the Western Conference All-Stars. Just simply because I think it's a lot more straightforward than the Eastern Conference.
The East is a bit trickier, as it always is when it comes to these kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, let's not waste any time, man. Let's jump right into this.
Yeah. So as we know, the format changed a couple years ago, so now there's no more centers.
Rest in peace.
Now it's just rest in peace to the center spot. Though again, now it is making a comeback. I think the center position, I just think needed some time to evolve, but now we can firmly say the big man is back, you know. But that's a conversation for another time.
Off season, maybe.
Yeah, off season. It's a good topic, though. I think we've covered it a couple of times. It's definitely always an interesting topic. But starting out with the Western Conference starters, we'll start out with the guard spot. So the first guard spot, we have Damian Lillard. Now, Damian Lillard's team is currently in the 6th seed in the Western Conference. They have been hit with a massive amount of injuries, as is the yearly ritual for Portland at this point. You know, it's a yearly thing for Portland. Just they start out well and everyone gets injured. So you gotta feel for Trailblazers fans. But yeah, they're currently the 6th seed with a 12-10 record, with Damian Lillard averaging 29.1 points a game with 7.3 assists, shooting 38% from three, 45% from the field. Damian Lillard numbers, a regular thing. I mean, simply put, Damian Lillard is being one of the best players in the league this year. I think, he's just not getting as big of a name this year because of the fact that, number one, I think Steph Curry is back, who, again, we're going to talk about as our next name. But, number one, Steph Curry's back. So as opposed to last year where Steph Curry wasn't there and Damian Lillard was able to get a lot more of the spotlight. So I think this year, that's one of the reasons why he hasn't been able to get the spotlight as much. And then number two as well, like the Portland Trailblazers are, in the middle of the pack right now. Again, injuries, huge part of that. But, Portland is not doing the greatest either.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of you who have listened to the show for a while have known that I'm a very big Damian Lillard guy. I really like it. I love to watch him play. I like his game. I like his intensity, the mindset that he comes into a game with. And yeah, like you said, like he's doing what he's been doing for the last few seasons. It's always, it's Dame time, man. Like this guy is putting his team on his back, especially with the slew of injuries Portland just somehow just seems to get hit with every single season. And he's being the best player on the floor for his team and leading them night in, night out. And I think like I agree, like the buzz and the excitement over Damian Lillard has kind of been kind of tapered off because Steph Curry is back. But that doesn't change the reality of the fact that he's still one of the best players in this league and one of the best, in my opinion, the best guard in this league.
I don't know about that one, but he is one of the best. We can say that for sure, right? He's one of the best point guards in the league. He's one of the best scorers in the league. I think a lot of the buzzkill in Portland also stems from the fact that their free agent acquisitions or their offseason acquisitions have not performed as much as people would hope. I think you were really on the train for them, right? Yeah. I mean, I was very excited for them too, but I think you were more excited for them than I was. But I think in particular, a guy like Robert Covington, who has not performed up to expectations, right? Now, again, we weren't asking Robert, third overall in defensive player of the year, like he was a couple of years ago or whatever. But, at least make your shots and play defense, which that has been up and down so far for the Portland Trailblazers. But as I was talking about,
Yeah, I do think Robert Covington can turn it around though. So,
I mean, he's a veteran.
He's a veteran. So again, he's always been streaky in his career, but I'll say that as one saving grace for Robert Covington. But yeah, he's really underperforming so far.
As I was talking about before, speaking of the two-time MVP, Steph Curry. Steph Curry right now is averaging 29.5 points a game, 6.1 assists, shooting 48% from the field, shooting his regular 43% from three, right? Let's take that in.
Yeah,
43% from three, normal Steph Curry stuff. Efficient field goal percentage of 61%, which is absolutely crazy for a point guard. Absolutely crazy. But he has his team right now, which, considering what they've dealt with, the injuries, literally everyone on that team is being injured. Kevon Looney right now, I think, is out as well, and he was supposed to be their starting center. I think James Wiseman was also out for a bit. And then, when you have massive disappointments like Kelly Oubre on the squad, so like Golden State is not doing that well. Though again, Kelly Oubre did have a 40-point game, so I'll give him credit for that. Maybe he can turn it around, but yeah, Kelly Oubre is not being great.
Yeah, I mean, again, although what I just said about Lillard, I don't disrespect Steph Curry at all. I think he's a great player. Is his game for me? No, it's not. It's not to me what aesthetically pleasing, but I can't deny that he's super talented. He changes the way a defense has to guard him, and this season, man, he's doing what he needs to do for his team. Like losing Kevin Durant and now losing Klay Thompson for the year kind of puts Steph in this role where he has to be his team's offense, especially when you have guys like freaking Kelly Oubre who has to run out like Naruto and forget how to shoot. So like he really needs to be that scorer and that driver of offense for his team. And like you said, I mean, they have a few injuries going on and players that are underperforming. So again, it's no surprise to me that he's still playing at this high level, especially coming off of a hand injury last season, and a disappointing year overall for the Warriors. So again, no, it's no shocker to us that Steph Curry is on this list, man. And yeah, man, nothing else to say, man. He's one of the best guards in this league for sure.
Yeah, I think for both of us, right, his game is not aesthetically pleasing considering, the era we grew up watching. I feel like an old head saying that. But I mean, it's kind of true in terms of like what we grew up watching. But there's no denying this guy is one of the greatest of all time. You're talking about, I just named out the stats for you, right? Pretty much 30 points, 43% from three, 61% effective field goal percentage. And that's pretty much him backpacking the offense. To put up numbers like that on the efficiency that he does with pretty much no real help around him is absolute insane.
Is he 50-40-90? Is he 50-40-90 this season?
50 for almost.
Okay, he's pretty close. I mean, he's always been a 50.
He's 2%. He's 2% down for his field goal percentage.
Off year.
But off year, bro, off year. But yeah, like as I was saying, man, that's completely like that's bananas, bro. That's completely insane what Steph Curry is doing, man. Definitely deserves the top spot.
Yeah.
In the All-Star game. Next up, another guy that's been crazy for his whole career. And that
still
pretty much, preceded us watching basketball, and that's how great he is. LeBron James, no surprise there. Year 18, still putting up an MVP caliber season. Absolutely crazy. There's not much you can say about LeBron that hasn't been said already. Averaging right now a measly 25.6 points a game, a measly 25.6 a game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists.
Off year, 40, man.
50% from off year, bro. 50% from the field goal range, field goal percentage, and this is the big one I think that's being talked about a lot this season. But 40% from three, right? LeBron is a better shooter now than he has ever been, right? And he's getting, he's not at the prime stage of his career anymore. But, even he's talked about that this version of LeBron would kill his Miami days. And for good reason, because of the fact that though he is not as physically dominant as he once was, his IQ is just on another level. Not to mention the fact that his offensive game is as complete as ever. He's a legitimate shooter now. He's developed his post game to the point where now it's just automatic. He gets in the post, he's fading away, he's turning over his right shoulder, he's going to the basket. It doesn't matter. He's in the post now. You can't stop him. He's always been one of the best passers in the league. I think as well just give him the crown of best passer in the league. Arguably, him, Nikola Jokic. I think LeBron's probably the better one. But LeBron is just insane, man. Like there's nothing you can say. Again, his IQ level is just, for me personally, I don't know, I never watched Magic Johnson personally. But I've never seen somebody control the game the way LeBron does, in terms of the fact that he will hold the ball for 20 seconds and will get a perfect shot right at the end of the shot clock. There's nobody I've seen better at controlling the speed, the tempo, the pace of the game, the shots of the game, the way that LeBron does right now in his career. And, for all the LeBron haters, even if you don't like him, bro, you're witnessing greatness, complete greatness, man. And even I think I got to do it because, like we both watch football too. But you have to respect Tom Brady in that regard. Though me and Hani both hate him, right? You can't deny his greatness, right? Similar to LeBron, for LeBron haters, you can't deny his greatness, man. He's just doing it again in year 18, man. Nobody's done this. Nobody's had the career that LeBron has in the NBA. You can make an argument for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Kareem is not handling the ball like LeBron does, is not shooting the ball like LeBron does.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying this. Zeeshan is a much bigger LeBron fan than I am. I've always respected LeBron from a distance, but he's never always been my favorite guy to watch as a player. But you said it the same, like similar to what you said about Tom Brady. You have to respect this man and the achievements and the fact that he's still going and he's still winning. And I think LeBron is at a level, like you said, at 40% from three, man. That's jaw dropping. In his 18th season in the career, 18th year of his career, and he's now evolved his game again. Where now he's a 3-point shooter. It's incredible, man. And the fact that we even have to say anything is is crazy, because there isn't really anything else to say. He's LeBron James. He's the best player in the world currently today. I don't care about Kevin Durant, Kawhi. It's clearly still LeBron James, and we've seen it, man. When this guy wants to dominate a game, he's the best, one of the best to ever do it. And I think
playoff LeBron.
Yeah, playoff LeBron is insane. It's real. It's very scary and traumatizing for any fan base.
For us in particular.
For us in particular. But yeah, like, I'm not gonna waste anybody's time, man. LeBron definitely deserves to be on this All-Star list. And he's, again, arguably, in my opinion, he's one of the greatest talents to ever play in this league.
Maybe the greatest.
He's
just pure talent wise, I think he might be the greatest.
One of the most complete players I think I have seen ever. And there's I've seen a lot of players. I've seen quite a bit of basketball, but yeah, nothing tops LeBron.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, another guy we have on the starters, and we're probably gonna have to move it on a bit quicker from now on. But another guy we have is Kawhi Leonard in the forward spot. Now, Kawhi Leonard is probably having his, a better year this year, and the Clippers as a whole have been this year than they were last year. He's currently averaging 26 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists on 50% field goal percentage, 38% from three. Now, Kawhi Leonard, again, there's not much we can say. He's been in the league for a while. Maybe not the defensive player he once was, but offensively, he's gone better every single year. And right now, the Clippers have been rolling, thanks in large part due to their two best players.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a Kawhi guy. I've loved Kawhi, when he's during his time with the Spurs. And now, like, I think he's more determined this season, especially after what happened last season. And you're seeing it now where he's just coming in, he's dominating. He's being Kawhi Leonard, and again, like you said, he's not playing the defense that he once did. But we all know that whenever he wants to, he can get a stop whenever he wants. And now, to complement that, he has this great offensive arsenal that he's developed over his career. So Kawhi Leonard is, again, another no-brainer for the All-Star list.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, to round out the forward spot and round out the 5 starters for the Western Conference, we have arguably the front runner for the MVP, Nikola Jokic. Now, him and Joel Embiid right now, I think, are arguably the 2 front runners for the MVP spot. But Nikola Jokic has gone even better, I think, and which is crazy to say. He's averaging 27.5 points a game, 11.5 rebounds, 8.5 assists a game, on 56.5% field goal, 40% from three, which was always it was always a question mark for him in terms of the fact that he could always shoot, but his percentages were very up and down. So the fact that he's shooting 40% from three this year, absolute crazy. I think even at this point, people have to admit it. Nikola Jokic might be the most complete center of all time. That's a legitimate argument at this stage. Even his young career, he might be the most complete, at least offensively. Okay, defensively, obviously not. But offensively, in terms of what he can do on the floor, I can't think of anyone at the center spot who's been more complete in their career on that offensive side of the ball. Obviously this year the Nuggets have struggled because of the fact that they can't play no defense. They lost Mason Plumlee, Jeremy Grant, JaMychal Green came. They lost Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee. Those were the big two. And losing them in free agency really, really hurt their defense, and you're seeing it this year in terms of the fact that Nuggets are right now the 8th seed. Nikola Jokic has kind of had to backpack. Jamal Murray hasn't taken that step forward that a lot of people had hoped. So Nikola Jokic is kind of being forced to backpack and score even more than he would like to. But that's the crazy part about Nikola Jokic. He's one of the best facilitators in the game. And then if the team asks him to score, he's like, "All right, I can score better than most people in the league too."
Yeah, Jamal Murray's waiting to be down 3-1 in a series for him to show up. So we're waiting on Jamal Murray. But Nikola Jokic, man, you said it, but you said it earlier that he's arguably one of the most complete offensive centers we have seen in league history. And I think a lot of that, especially I think a lot of credit has to be given to him with the way basketball's played today, at least the NBA game is played today, with centers that have to adapt. And he's yeah, he's been probably the most playable center I've seen in most situations. Besides his defense, offensively, he can do everything on the floor. He's not a liability, and I think as Raptor fans, seeing what not having a reliable option at the center spot does, you know, seeing Jokic just shows the embodiment of what you want your center to be able to do. At least what Jokic does at a very high and a very extreme level. That's something that many bigs can't do. But I think a lot of centers need to replicate a lot of what he does, especially from the playmaking, the rebounding aspect of it, being able to do more for your team than just stay under the basket and collect rebounds or just dunk. So I think Jokic is definitely a fantastic player, and I mean, if he keeps this going, man, he might be the first big since Dirk Nowitzki to win an MVP award, man, which is insane.
Yeah, and first center since Shaq.
Yeah.
To win the MVP award. To your point, I think too quickly. I think to your point, yeah, more centers need to replicate Jokic because of the fact that you think about him, he's not bigger than most centers. He's kind of average height, right? Not in terms of weight, but in terms of the height wise, he's not dominating a center in terms of the height. He's definitely not faster than most centers, not athletic, right? But it's just the fundamentals, man. His IQ is completely crazy. He gets in the post and he's his footwork is amazing to watch, man. It's like I play a guard position, right? But to watch him and his footwork, everyone has to try and replicate that, Nikola Jokic, and then even on the defensive side of the ball too. Whereas before he was complete liability, he to his credit tried to improve that game as much as he could. Now he's never gonna be a great defender, but he's improved on that part of his game substantially. So shout out to Nikola Jokic, bro. He's definitely one of my favorite players to watch. Yeah. Next up, we're moving on to the bench. And now the bench has the same format as the starters in terms of 2 guards, 3 forwards, but then they also have 2 reserves to round out the team. Now for our first guard, we're gonna go with Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic right now is averaging 27.8 points a game, 8.7 rebounds, 9.3 assists, shooting 46% from the field. Unfortunately, shooting 33, which has been a sticking point in his career so far. The 3-point percentage has not been great. But, he's kind of being asked to backpack a lot for the Dallas Mavericks, who are currently the 13th seed right now. So they are not doing great at all. They're underwhelming expectations by, I think, a wide margin. Now, again, some of that has to be due to the fact of, the protocols and for the thing. I don't know if we should mention or not, like demonetization, all that random rules, but like because of protocols, the Mavs have have a lot of players being in and out, but the Mavs as a whole have not been great. I think we're seeing the loss of Seth Curry. I think how much that has impacted them a lot more than they thought it would. Josh Richardson has unfortunately he hasn't been able to replicate the success that he had a couple years ago in Miami. And he's kind of starting to plateau a bit in his career. So, the Mavericks as a whole have been very disappointing. Luka, I think even he would admit he has not played the best ball of his career. I think he's starting to turn it up a bit. But, the stats, he's always amazing on the stats part of it. It's just, the winning portion of it has been hard to come by. But in terms of, the All-Star game, he's a lock for the All-Star game. The stats he puts up is completely crazy.
Look, man, I've been driving the Luka train since day one. I'm not hopping off right now, man. I ain't one of those type of people, but yeah, I think from the numbers standpoint, Luka's putting up historic numbers for a player of his age. In his third season in the league, doing what he's doing, backpacking the Dallas Mavericks. It's been incredible to watch, and I think if his team was winning more, he probably would be in the MVP conversation right now. But the reality is that the wins got to start coming, and I don't know what happened. The Mavs started off the season very well and just completely just dropped uh, since then. And I, for the life of me, I've been trying to figure out what's going on here. And yeah, it might have something to do with losing Seth Curry and Josh Richardson not performing to the expectations that were put upon him, or or like the lack of defense being played, or
That's an understatement.
or breakdowns in the fourth quarter or in the second half. So a multitude of reasons why the Mavs could be losing games, but the reality still stands is that Luka has been their bright spot. He's been one of the best players in this league, and I think deservedly going to be an All-Star.
Yeah. The Mavs, if you remember quickly too, last year were playing at a historically great offensive level, and they've failed to replicate that this year. Their offense has been nowhere near that level of production. I think a lot of that also has to do with a guy like Steven Silas leaving and getting his own job in Houston, right? Steven Silas was, Rick Carlisle's top guy on the bench, and so maybe a large part of the success that they had last year was due to that guy. So we'll see if the Mavs can turn around, but Luka Doncic for sure deserves an All-Star spot. Next up, we have a guy on a team that's doing pretty much the exact opposite of how the Mavericks are doing. The Utah Jazz's Donovan Mitchell. Now, Donovan Mitchell has been averaging 23.5 points a game, 5 assists a game, shooting 43% from field, not great, but 41% from three. There's a lot of guys that you can put for the Jazz. I think we'll get to another player as well next up. But the Jazz as a whole team, have been amazing to watch, man. They've taken that next step in their development. Quinn Snyder is able to implement a lot more of what he wants on offense, I think, whereas before he was a bit limited. Now with guys like Bogdanovich, getting some more reps into the system, Royce O'Neal taking over that fourth spot permanently, and finally, Mike Conley being back to Mike Conley, right? Obviously, last year we were all questioning like what in the world is going on with Mike Conley. But now that Mike Conley's playing like his usual self again, the Utah Jazz have been just unstoppable, man. They're on a 15-game winning streak. Oh no, sorry, 4-game winning streak. I think they've won 15 of the last 16 or something like that. Something crazy like that. Point is, they're number one in the Western Conference, ahead of the Lakers, ahead of the Clippers. The Utah Jazz have been simply just amazing to watch. 1 through 15. 1 through 15. The whole roster has been great.
Yeah, what a steal of a pick for the Utah Jazz, making that trade to get Donovan Mitchell, man. Like, he's been a franchise changer for them, and he's been a great player. I really do like watching his game. But I think you touched upon it, Mike Conley. He's the guy that we were all like, look, we gotta put a point. We put a point guard, like a playmaking type of point guard next to Donovan Mitchell, who can also create his own shot. This will open up this offense. Then pair that with the Bogdanovich giving you a bit of scoring, Gobert giving you the rebound and the defensive anchor. This team had always had the pieces in place, but that guard spot last season we saw Mike Conley was not performing. But then we saw in the bubble, the old Mike Conley started to show up, and now we're seeing, Mike Conley, the real Mike Conley is back. The imposter from last season has kind of gone away, and it's paying dividends for the Jazz now, who are now the number one seed in the Western Conference, man. And I don't think anybody predicted them to be this good. Now, the one thing that we do need to mention about the Utah Jazz is sustaining the success. Now, they've always gone on massive highs, but also really bad lows. So hopefully they can kind of overcome that. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell has been a huge part of it, and I think he's a deserved All-Star, especially if they can keep this up.
Yeah, again, like you could put a number of guys in terms of Utah Jazz, but we all know the catalyst for the offense is Donovan Mitchell. Without Donovan Mitchell being there, the Utah Jazz would be nowhere near what they are. Though again, Donovan Mitchell's stats aren't crazy, at least for his standards. But you gotta have someone there to represent the Jazz.
But that's good.
And yeah, that's good. That's good for the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't care if you score
speaking of-
24.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the other guy that's going to be representing the Jazz in the All-Star game, most likely, is Rudy Gobert. Now, Rudy Gobert is averaging 13 points a game, 13 and a half rebounds, and on 61% field goal percentage. Now, Rudy Gobert, like you can say, oh, the stats don't jump out, but if you watch the games, it matters. The eye test matters, right? You can see what an impact he has on the Jazz. And, he's always had a great impact on the Jazz, but this year I think he's taken that step forward. He's being asked to share a bigger role in the offense by Quinn Snyder this year. So he's taking more shots. He has more of an impact on the offense this year, not just, pick and roll, and then be a lob threat, get like two lobs a game, He's taken that step forward. Obviously he'll never be a great offensive center, but it's working for the Utah Jazz right now. Him, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Jingles, Bogdanovich, all of them, Royce O'Neal, all of them have been playing amazing. And, we talk about it. The defense for the Utah Jazz starts and ends with Rudy Gobert. No matter how much you hate the guy, having him on your team guarantees you a top 7 defensive spot in the league.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talked about Rudy Gobert and that Defensive Player of the Year pick, so definitely check that episode out to see who we picked for that award. But his impact is undeniable, especially this season where you're seeing him starting to be a bigger factor on the offensive side of the ball. He's taking more shots, and I think that was not something I noticed with Gobert a lot. Like, he wouldn't take shots a lot of the time. He would kind of hand it back out to the perimeter and kind of reset that way, rather than attacking a mismatch or going for a hook shot over a bigger defender. But again, a lot of what Gobert does starts on the defensive side, and his impact there is best in the league, man. Like, there's no center that poses that big of a threat inside, like in the paint, than Rudy Gobert, man. Like, nobody wants to drive when Rudy's patrolling that paint, man. And it just helps so much for the guards to have that safety valve, and you can see it why they're such a great defense, man.
Yeah, and even like his offense too, not just the fact that like he's trying to make a bigger impact on the offensive side of the ball, but a stat that gets underrated a lot is screen assists, right? Or points from or screens that lead to points directly, right? And Rudy Gobert has been arguably the best at that in the league, right, for the last couple. And that's one of the stats or points that tend to get overshadowed and overlooked a lot. But he's been doing that since time. And the fact that this year he's added to his offensive game, he's trying to do more for you offensively. You can see why the Utah Jazz have been as great as they've been. But again, we have to see what he'll do in the playoffs, and again, it matters, but the playoffs is what matters now with the Utah Jazz. Yeah. Speaking of another guy who we have to see what happens come playoff time is Mr. Playoff P himself, Paul George. Now, Paul George, in all credit, all fairness to him, he has been absolutely balling this season. He's come out on a mission to, prove the doubters wrong, to, erase the memories of way off P, bubble P. He's tried to do everything he can, and he has come out this season balling, averaging 24 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 51% from the field. The crazy stat, 48% from 3. This guy is going absolutely crazy from 3. He is not missing. And then, of course, always a great free throw shooter. He's shooting 90.5% from the free throw line.
I'm gonna put
60% effective field goal percentage. That's absolutely crazy.
I'm gonna put my Alex Wong hat on and take full credit for Paul George's success, even though just because I dogged on him the entire what was that, what, a 2 month off season? I don't know.
Everyone did though. Everyone did.
Well,
In all fairness.
look, man, I was on this show. I was very public about it, and I do not apologize because I'm gonna say one thing, Paul George, you're welcome. I lit the fire under your ass, and yeah, he's playing well. He's doing what we knew he's capable of, and being that a great scorer and a great defender. And I think the 3-point shooting is probably the most surprising, considering his nickname is way off P, but I think he took it to heart. I think he really, 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 the criticism really affected him, and at least he took it in a good way and decided to improve his game, and it shows. Now the question with Paul George is, can he replicate this success in the playoffs? Because that's what the Clippers need from him in the playoffs, and only time will tell. But yeah, this season it's no undeniable. This guy is playing at an all-star level this season.
Yeah. Like obviously the 3-point percentage will come down eventually. I mean, yeah, it should, unless this guy just keeps going crazy. But like it's the way, like, I hate to mention it and be like a Skip Bayless about it, but like the eye test does matter, right? You look at this guy this year, there's something different about him, right? I don't know if that's just me making it up, but I feel as though there is something different about him. I think it's just his willingness to accept what happened last year and just to work past it, move past it, and prove everyone wrong this year. So, for Paul George, I respect if he can continue balling out like this, and try to make up for what happened last year. I respect it. Another guy that's probably always a lock for the All-Star game is Anthony Davis. He's averaging 22 points a game right now, 8 rebounds, shooting 53% from the field, 31.5 from 3, and also 70% from the free throw line. Now, AD is definitely having, I think, a bad year for his standards, right? Now, again, we know that AD is unfortunately one of the most injury-prone players in the league. Probably one of the most fragile players in the league. So the fact that you have such a quick turnaround from a deep playoff run, definitely has not helped him out. Not to mention the fact that he has all these nagging injuries that he always has. Obviously, his back is apparently permanently messed up. Like Anthony Davis, unfortunately, has not had the year that a lot of people would have hoped for him to do, which has led to LeBron sort of having to take a bigger role than I think he probably wanted to this season. Anthony Davis is just not being. I've been watching a lot of Laker games. Obviously, I'm a LeBron fan, but watching Anthony Davis on the court, there's something off about him. He does have his moments where he turns into the Anthony Davis we saw in the playoffs, but he just has not looked great all season. Hopefully just going through the season, getting back into shape would help him out so that in the playoffs, they have a great chance of succeeding. And then, when he probably puts more effort into the playoffs. But I think it's a situation that Lakers fans have to monitor in particular. But, in terms of, again, for this All-Star game, he's still good enough to get in.
Yeah.
Especially the Lakers as a 2 seed.
Yeah, I mean, again, the success of the team and the fact that he's still putting up quality numbers for a team that's winning as much as they are, still puts you in the All-Star conversation, at least in my book, in our books. But yeah, I mean, you said it just now. Just like, it's been a bit of a down year for Anthony Davis, especially from his standards. It's like something is off, and I think what you said about the lack of rest between seasons is something that, for a player like him who's had a lot of nagging injuries, is very important. And I think we're seeing the impact of not having that this season. Now, hopefully, again, I think having that, hopefully he'll get that 2-week break during what should be the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And he'll be able to rest up and recover so the Lakers can use him for the playoff run. But, I mean, that still doesn't change the fact that he's still putting up All-Star numbers, and I think the Lakers are deserving of having 2 players represent them because of how well they played to start the season. So we'll see what about Anthony Davis, but again, if he gets some rest, I'm not too worried about him and the Lakers' chances moving forward because you still have the best player in the world on your team.
Facts. So to round out the All-Star team, the first reserve that we're gonna have is Devin Booker. Now, Devin Booker, he did have a slow start this season, but currently he's averaging 23.5 points a game, shooting 47.8% from the field, shooting 36% from three, which again is a bit down for him, right? But I think us having Devin Booker in here stems from the fact that the Phoenix Suns are the fourth seed right now, which is a big accomplishment in the West in particular, right? And they're convincing fourth seed. They're winning the games that they should. They've been a very good team. Their bench has had a lot to do with it. Their bench has been pretty good, to be honest. Maybe it might have been, the biggest factor in the team's, considering Chris Paul and Devin Booker were both kind of struggling. But Devin Booker has definitely turned it up recently. And I think, again, we had to put Devin Booker, we had to put a Phoenix Sun in here, right? They're the fourth seed. We needed to put at least, I think, one player in here. Devin Booker does have the better stats than Chris Paul. So I think for us, that was, I think, the main reason why we choose to have Devin Booker as one of our reserves.
Yeah, I mean, I think Devin Booker has always been that guy on the fence on will he be an All-Star, will he not be an All-Star. And some years he's gotten snubbed because of the fact that his team wasn't winning, and he was putting up great numbers, great stats, but it wasn't translating to wins. And though his numbers don't look eye-popping as they have in the past, but now you can see his numbers are translating to wins, and now he's more impactful to his team. And I think a lot of credit has to be going to Chris Paul. I think the Chris Paul effect is real. I think whatever team he goes to, man, he makes it work. And I think he's one of my favorite point guards of all time. So I think a lot of that has to do with how he's able to come in and, galvanize the troops and being able to get everyone to play together and play hard each and every single night. So I definitely think Chris Paul has been a major influence on Devin Booker. And I think with the success Phoenix has had this season, there should be a representative of their team on there to showcase their success. And I think Devin Booker is their best player, and I think he should be there to represent them.
Yeah, exactly. And then for our last reserve, this is where me and Hani actually had a difference of opinion. So for me, I have De'Aaron Fox as my last reserve. Hani has John Wall. So just a couple of stats head to head for you guys. I'll say my piece on why I think De'Aaron Fox should be in the All-Star game. Hani will tell you why he thinks John Wall should be in the All-Star game. You guys decide who you guys would choose over each other, or one of the other guys that we're going to talk about in a bit in terms of our Allstar Snubs, who we didn't put on our All-Star team. So for De'Aaron Fox on the stats he's putting up right now, he's averaging 23 points a game, 6.5 assists, shooting 48% from the field, 36% from three. The free throw percentage has been down 68.7%, which is kind of surprising for a guard. But he is shooting 53% effective field goal percentage. Compare that to John Wall, who has played significantly less games, I will say that. But he right now is averaging 18.8 points a game, 6 assists, 44% from the field, 37% from three. So both guys are definitely doing their thing. In terms of why I think De'Aaron Fox should get into the All-Star game, now again, some of this reasoning may change by the time the All-Star weekend rolls around. But right now, the Sacramento Kings are the 7th seed. They've been on a 4-game win streak. Over the last 10 games, they've been rolling. And De'Aaron Fox is the main catalyst for that. 7th seed in the Western Conference, especially for a garbage franchise like the Sacramento Kings, right? Let's just get out of the way. We've talked about the Sacramento Kings a lot, and I don't even think Sacramento fans mind us just constantly trashing their organization, because I think they would have more to say than us about how trash their organization is. But De'Aaron Fox has been putting up all-star numbers. He's been putting up all-star numbers from last year. He could have made it last year, but I think this year, the fact that the Sacramento Kings are winning games, I think definitely helps his all-star case out. And he looks a lot more comfortable out there, man. He's shooting great from three. He doesn't put up the volume that other guards do, but he's still shooting pretty good from three. He's always been one of the best downhill finishers in the league. So the fact that now he's averaging 23 points a game for a team that's the seventh seed in the West, especially with a garbage franchise like Sacramento. I think that for me puts him over the top as to why I think he should be in the All Star game. I think it's also a bit of bias from last year where a lot of people wanted him to make the All Star game, but it's the West, man. There's no space, right? So I think this year the fact that he's winning games for me, I think solidifies his All Star position. And I think especially the fact that I think Sacramento, if they keep this up, would need a representative in the All Star game, and De'Aaron Fox is their best player.
I think you just touched upon it right there. Why I didn't go with De'Aaron Fox, and I think for me it's about, can Sacramento keep this up? And honestly, man, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I don't think they can keep this up. I think
I know either. If I'm
like
real,
like it's like they've done this a bunch of times in this run with this young core that they have. There are stretches where they're great and there are stretches where they're horrible. Did y'all see that for that 20 plus point comeback by the Raptors? What was it, 3 weeks ago at this point? So the Kings were that bad before. So again, De'Aaron has been great on the Kings this year. He's had a good season, but I think his impact isn't as great as what I think John Wall is for the Houston Rockets. And I think for the Rockets, having a guy coming off of major injuries, major surgeries, they didn't know what to expect out of this guy. But the fact, even after the James Harden trade, you can see how much of an impact John Wall has made onto this team, where they have been one of the best defenses in the league since the James Harden trade. They play hard every single night. John Wall facilitates the ball very well. He's shooting the ball far better than he was in any season of his career. And his scoring is still at a great level. And I think his impact, when you take him out of the Rockets, they're a completely different team. And I've been paying a lot of attention to Houston this season. And that to me is very apparent. And I think, although Houston's been through a lot of crazy crap, especially the city of Houston, with the whole Deshaun Watson thing going on with the NFL. And
the Houston Rockets. Houston as a city in terms of sports has been
it's
been interesting on Astros. Yeah, I was just gonna say that. A lot of stuff has happened for them.
Yeah. So the fact that now you have a guy in John Wall who's you didn't really expect to be great and has come in and made this much of an impact on your team, where your team is actually looking decent. To me, I think that's deserving of an All-Star nod, but who really knows at this point who's going to get what?
Yeah, man. The reason I think I don't have John Wall there, he's been great, no doubt, especially his story's been great, coming back from multiple injuries and whatnot. But I think for me, number one, if you want to talk about impact, if you take away De'Aaron Fox from the Sacramento Kings, they're even more garbage than they already were. Number two, De'Aaron Fox, I think, has better stats. I will say that. Also, the Houston Rockets are the 12th seed right now, whereas the Sacramento Kings are the 7th seed. So I don't know. That's just me personally. But give in terms of the Sacramento Kings is Tyrese Haliburton, man. This guy's crazy. This guy is absolutely insane.
How did he slip?
For him to do what he does as a rookie and to look like a veteran out there, and he plays as perfect as you can play for a rookie, man.
That's a good rookie.
We're gonna talk about him. I think maybe, I don't know, somewhere down the line. But Tyrese Haliburton, man, he is special.
He's a very good player, and hopefully the Kings don't corrupt him as well. But yeah, man, I think those were our picks for the main All-Stars. Let us know what you guys think. But also quickly, before we end talking about the All-Stars, we want to talk about some of the potential snubs that we were discussing to put into this list, but we didn't. We're not going to obviously go deep into them for the sake of time. The first two I think I should mention is Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson of the Pelicans. I think they're putting up great numbers. They're putting up actually very similar numbers, about 24 points each. But I think for them, I think our sticking point was the winning factor. The fact that the Pelicans have actually been kind of very bad, bad this season. And, they've been on a 4-game win streak or something recently.
Yeah, so they're on a 4-game win streak. They're the 10th seed now, so they have climbed out of a bit of a hole. But yeah, as you're talking about, like, the winning factor is not being there for the Pelicans, especially the fact that I think a lot of people expected them to be better. We didn't have them in our playoffs, but I think we definitely expected them to play better than what they're playing right now.
Yeah.
And then just like defensively, they've been terrible. Zion Williamson, you can say the offensive numbers are great, which they are, but defensively he's been complete garbage as well. Just the Pelicans as a whole. We talked about Lonzo Ball episode. Definitely check that out if you haven't. Pelicans as a whole have been like a bit of a mismatch. It's just been a bit iggy all over like the roster, right? So I think that for us is our reason why to not put them in our All-Star team.
The Pelicans as a whole definitely need a rework in the roster construction, especially because they want to know who they're building around for their future. So yeah, that's why they didn't make our All-Star picks. Another player who could be classified as a snub, but I don't think he's gonna take it personally. I mean, actually, he will take it personally. It's Chris Paul. It's Chris Paul. The main reason we didn't put Chris Paul in is just the numbers. They're not as eye popping or as great as they were last season, and I think personally speaking, if we're not gonna play an All-Star game, I don't think Chris Paul really wants to play. He wants to stay home and get some rest because he's an old man and that's what he does. But he's there's no denying that his impact is beyond stats. What he does on the court is so much bigger, and I wouldn't be surprised if the coaches do actually vote him in for that exact reason. But just for us, man, we just felt like these other players were just better and deserving more of the spot than Chris Paul.
Also, the fact that I think there's no space.
Yeah, they're just not. There's just not in the West.
There's no space.
Yeah. Bringing us to another player who's had a great season, Zeeshan's guy, Christian Wood.
My guy, Christian Wood.
Christian Wood has been balling out. I think honestly speaking, numbers wise, we would have put him on this. We would have put him on this list, but it's just injuries, man, have prevented him from playing as much this season. He's had that ankle sprain for the Rockets, and that really killed him. Killed the momentum he was gaining. But man, he's putting up like 22 and 10, man. Like he was going to be an All-Star pick, but I think the injuries are what's going to hold him back.
Well, I mean, for me, I don't think he will be my All-Star pick either way, which is surprising, bro. My guy Christian Wood, the guy that I bring up every freaking episode. But it's just, bro, there's no space, man. You can't put him over Rudy Gobert. Nobody's gonna put him over Anthony Davis. Maybe you can make a case for him as a reserve, but
that's what I was gonna mean. Maybe a reserve.
Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox, they have better records, so I don't think the coaches would vote him in that regard either way. But he could have some hardware. We'll make an episode on our predictions for the awards later on in the season. But he could have some hardware, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Christian Wood is definitely someone who could be considered a snub. Another one is DeMar DeRozan. Though this is very unlikely, he was pretty unlikely to make it. He's been having a good season, man, for the Spurs, and the Spurs are kind of in the playoff mix right now, and so I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that DeMar could have made this All-Star game or at least been in contention, but. The likelihood of him making it, especially in the guard position, is very unlikely in the Western Conference.
And then finally we have John Morant. Now I think one of the reasons why people might feel that he's being snubbed is because of the fact that the Grizzlies were doing very good in the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, they've kind of tailed off after that.
They're on a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, they are on a 4-game losing streak, but John Morant has been the best player on the Grizzlies. We were watching him the other night when the Grizzlies faced the Raptors. Player. He's a great player, man. He's only gonna get better. He's only gonna get better, bro. Like his dribble penetration, his driving ability is absolutely crazy. The one thing he does need to get better on is obviously the shots, the 3-point shooting. But if he is able to tweak that, get better at that, man, he's gonna be an All-Star for years to come for sure.
He's a special player. I really enjoy watching John Morant. But yeah, those were our picks for the Western Conference All-Stars. Definitely let us know what you guys think. Do you agree or disagree? Do you think we missed anybody? I think definitely we probably missed people. But let us know what you guys think. Who would you pick to be Western Conference All-Stars this season? To end this week's episode, we want to jump into the up and under segment for this week. First off, are you up or under on NBA stars such as LeBron James, have you heard of him? Kawhi Leonard and Giannis speaking out against having the All-Star game this season. Chris Paul has actually come out and said that the NBPA is aware of the the negativity from the players surrounding playing the All-Star events. So are you up or under on the players saying no on and if the NBPA can prevent this from happening?
I mean, I think we're gonna make this quick because we talked about it last episode too. I'm hella under on it. I think we both are. It just completely makes no sense. And we're gonna talk about it with our next point as well. Like it just makes absolutely no sense at all. Having an All-Star weekend, especially the fact that they said they want to have an All-Star weekend. First of all, again, we'll reiterate: no fans, right? All these protocols that are happening. You're gonna have a bunch of players meet up in one hub.
Yeah.
You're taking away rest from a season where a lot of teams had a quick turnaround. I don't understand what the idea behind it is, other than obviously money, right? That's the only real factor behind it. And at this rate, I don't think it can happen because of the fact that literally everyone said no to it and nobody wants to go.
Giannis said it best. LeBron said no to this, and I think the conversation should stop right there. If you're the face of the league has said no, yeah, I wouldn't.
Again, it makes absolutely no sense considering what is going on in the NBA in particular. And another point we're going to talk about is: are you up or under on the whole Kevin Durant protocol situation versus the Raptors? Now he's had to miss a bunch of games because of that issue as well. So are you up or under on that?
I'm heavily under on that. I think the NBA completely mishandled that situation, and it was quite embarrassing. And it was a very risky move, especially for the visiting Raptors of that game. So the Raptors were playing the Nets.
And the Nets.
And the Nets. But at that point, like Kevin Durant already went into the locker room. They could have avoided this by not letting him play at least for the Raptors standpoint, not letting him play the game. So that way they'd be like a secondary or tertiary contact in terms of contact tracing. But the fact that you let Kevin Durant, you first said he wasn't allowed to play because of an inconclusive contact tracing test. Then you let him play. Then midway through the third quarter, you're like, no, the test came back positive. Now you can't play. Like, that's a bad look, man. Why was he out there? Why did you let him play? And as James Harden said, if he was a risk to potentially infect the team, why wasn't the game postponed? Like, it's just little things like that. It's like, how does the protocol make any sense in that regard? The only explanation that a lot of people have come to is that, once again, money. Kevin Durant is a draw. And he's a big name player. And the fact that he was brought back in only to be brought back, taken right back out, it was ridiculous, man. Embarrassing move for the league.
Yeah, exactly. It was a whole botch situation. Kevin Durant said it best. It was all about the optics, man. Again, you talked about it, man. Like the whole situation was completely botched in terms of the way they handled it. When I turned on the game, I saw Kevin, like when I turned on the game after, second quarter or whatever, he checked in. I was like, yo, I thought KD wasn't playing. And then I saw the notification, oh, now he's playing. And then you saw him get pissed off on the bench. And I thought that was just because like the fouls or whatever. And then you saw him dip from the game. I was like, what in the world? And then you get the report from like Rachel Nichols and stuff about, oh, he's being pulled out of the game. Like, bro, what is going on? Like, it makes no sense, right? And who's asked why nobody wants an All-Star weekend. It makes absolutely no sense to have a situation like an All-Star weekend.
It's too risky to do something like that.
Especially the fact that, the NBA's protocols are this tight and you want to carry on with the All-Star game, right? It's literally the opposite of what the NBA is being marketing.
What all sports leagues should be trying to do right now is finish their seasons. Like the NFL just finished their season. That's the goal. Finish your season, crown a champion, move forward. Because the more time, the more things you waste, the higher exposure you create, the less likely you're going to be able to finish the season, and that's far less revenue, and that impacts far more factors.
I don't even think the Big Four North American leagues had an All-Star event, except for the NBA. The NBA, which is weird because the NBA is always the one that gets it right.
The progressive one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now in this case, it's the complete opposite. So
Money.
I mean, I think the NBA has to be under some kind of real financial pressure for this to be happening.
Yeah, man, the bubble wasn't
So,
cheap. I'm just gonna say
exactly,
that.
exactly.
Yeah. Moving on, are you up or under? And I'm gonna specifically give you this one because I know it pertains to you. But are you up or under on Kevin Garnett saying that he doesn't think guys from 20 years ago can play in today's game?
You know what? I'm gonna say okay. I'm under on the fact of what he said because again, this proves my whole argument. This contributes to my whole argument about guys in any era for the most part can play in any era. But I will be up on the sense that finally there's an old head that actually has respect for today's NBA game and not just a guy that's constantly trashing on today's game. Like I think for people who watch basketball like us and like understand the game to the level that we do, not be arrogant or anything, but we understand, again, I'll reiterate it, great players transcend eras, right? You put any great player in any era, they're going to do great. You can't say Will Chamberlain was only a Hall of Famer because he played in the 60s. That makes no sense. You put Will Chamberlain in today's NBA game, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You put LeBron in the 80s, LeBron's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, right? And I think me in particular, I'm just sick of this whole argument that the old generation versus the new generation. I hope we don't become that. I've had some issues where I've been like, yo, I might become that in the future, especially our whole, 3-point argument.
I
like
think I'm gonna
Hani,
become that.
Yeah, me and Hani have kind of said it too. Like we've kind of been very against the whole 3-point era and whatnot. But I hope that we don't get to a level that guys like, I don't know, not to bring them up even more, but like guys like Shaq and whatnot have gotten to, where it's just like you want to talk about the new school game, just bash it, garbage, no defense being played, this blah blah blah, 3-point shooters, everyone's weak, everyone's soft, like this stuff. If you actually look into what's going on, none of these arguments hold any weight.
I mean, it's a different game. It's different than what it was played back then, and I think you have to look at it from that perspective before you call it out. And again, I'm heavily critical of some of the things that happen in today's game, but I also heavily respect a lot of what happens in this game. Like being able to score high volume is not easy. Like anybody, like ask Kobe, ask Michael Jordan, scoring 50, 40, 50-point games are not easy tasks to do, and it looks a lot easier because again the 3-point shots are there, but not an easy task to do. So I think, and then it also encourages more ball movement, free flowing offense, less isolation. It also makes defense far tougher to guard because now you have so many more skill players, so many more restrictions on how you guard now. Again, that officiating is
but
something
again,
else, but
I think it's not an exaggeration to say that the defenders right now are the greatest defenders in the history of the league because of all the rules they have restricting defense.
Yeah.
So like you want to say Marcus Smart is a great defender in this league, he's one of the greatest defenders of all time then in that regard, because of the fact that it's so hard to play defense now.
Minus
and if
the
you're
flopping.
An elite defensive, yeah, well, minus that.
He'd
but
get killed for that.
If you're an elite defender, think about how great these guys would be if you were allowed to have hand checking, right? And one more point about this too, because I hear this is an argument used a lot, right? Oh, this era is weak compared to the 80s and 90s, so they're worse. Well, the 60s guys said the exact same thing about the 80s and 90s, right? You heard Will Chamberlain say this a lot. Yo, the 90s guys, the 80s guys, Michael Jordan, they're all soft because they couldn't survive in our era. That's exactly what they said, right?
Yeah.
It's a generational thing.
It is.
I mean, we've talked about it. Like, I beat it to death. And at this point, if you don't understand the argument, like, there's no hope for you, man. Like, it's just you get it or you don't.
Well, I mean, regardless, you can complain about it all you want. The reality is, it's not going to change anything unless you're on the court. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Next up, are you up or under on the Derrick Rose trade to the New York Knicks for Dennis Smith Jr. and a second-round pick?
So, if you saw our last episode that we talked about players that need to be traded, definitely check that out if you haven't done so already. We did mention Derrick Rose as one of the players that we felt needed to be traded. Little did I know, a couple of days after that episode, like after we recorded, that episode while I was actually editing the episode. Derrick Rose was traded to the Knicks, and as soon as I saw the trade, I was just so under on it, just from the perspective of Derrick Rose, because I was like, why? Like, out of all, like, why does he have to go here? You know, he got out of Detroit, he got out of a losing situation to go play for the Knicks. Now, sure, the Knicks have been better this season, as hard as that is to say, but they've been better this season. But they're not in a position, like, they're not on the same timeline that Derrick Rose should be on. I think Derrick Rose should go chase a championship, because if he wins a championship, that is the one thing that has eluded him in his career. He hasn't won a championship. He's won the MVP award. He's been an All-Star. He needs that championship. And if he gets that championship, I think he'd sign on with a lot of his haters. Now, again, he has a huge fan base.
I don't even think he has that many haters at this point, bro. I think everyone just feels too bad for him to be a hater, to be honest.
I mean, granted, yes, because, again, it was horrible, his injury situation and how his career was kind of taken from him. But the fact of the matter is, I would have loved to see Derrick Rose on a contender, and I think what the Knicks had to give, like, again, considering what the Pistons took back, Dennis Smith Jr. in a second-round pick, honestly speaking, my first trade, like, I was even more disgusted because I thought the Raptors could make a trade for Derrick Rose. Because I'm like, hey, we could give you far better. We'll give you Terrence Davis and maybe 2 seconds for Derrick Rose.
I think not 2 seconds, bro. Give them like 1 second, man.
Whatever, but the reality is,
Terrence Davis is better than Dennis Smith Jr., so
exactly,
like, we'd be giving them a better package.
You'd be giving them, you could have gotten way better from a contender, another contending team, so it would have worked out better for both Derrick Rose and the Pistons. But it is what it is. He's on the New York Knicks now, and I mean, he played his first game today, so he looked pretty good. I mean, Derrick Rose is excited to be back in New York, but I would have loved to see him somewhere else.
I think we should have probably seen this coming a bit more, considering, you know, Tom Thibodeau is on the team. So Tom Thibodeau is not playing a team without Derrick Rose.
You already know. For Joakim Noah's next, then Luol Deng, then Carlos Boozer, yo. He's putting the entire band back together, yo. This shit ain't called the New York Knicks no more. It's called the New York Bulls, yo.
I mean, he brought back Taj Gibson, even though it's looking like Taj Gibson's career was over.
Everyone's playing 48 minutes.
Exactly, bro. Facts. I really hope he doesn't ruin RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson. But,
he will.
You know, I hope not.
I'm waiting for it so badly. Yeah, man, but I'm under on this trade. I just think it's kind of a waste. And in the Knicks, also for the Knicks, you don't need Derrick Rose, man. Why would you go after Derrick Rose when you don't need him? Now, if it was to get rid of Dennis Smith Jr., fine. But to be honest with you, you could have bought Dennis Smith Jr. out and nobody would have said anything. So I don't know, man. To me, it was kind of a waste of a trade, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Finally, are you up or under on Bobby Webster? Finally signing a multi-year extension with the Toronto Raptors.
I'm hella up on it, man. Next up, Masai.
Bobby got paid, yo.
Yeah, Bobby got paid. It's time for Masai to get his contract.
Yeah. I
really hope he doesn't dip, because that would really suck. Especially the fact of, you know, we just seen Kawhi, Serge, and Mark all dip. And if Masai just dips out the door too.
That means Kyle's gone too.
Yeah, we might trade Kyle Lowry. Oh man, yo, that would suck.
Babe,
you know, just 2 years after a championship for all of this to happen, bro.
He brought us a ring.
Toronto. Listen, bro, that's the most Toronto thing ever. Even when we have success, it's followed by just straight downhill.
But I'll say this though, at least this time we're not left with nothing. We still are left with Pascal, Fred VanVleet, Norm, OG. So we're left with a good core of young players to build off, and a competent and a very good GM in Bobby Webster and coach in Nick Nurse. So if Masai, although I don't want Masai Ujiri or Kyle Lowry to leave, but if they decide to move on, the Raptors do have a good future lined up for them.
Listen, bro, if Washington was willing to give Masai ownership stake, man, MLSE better give up an ownership stake to Masai, bro.
That's a little tougher, because MLSE also owns multiple different sports. I mean, I don't know. It's confusing.
And well, I mean, they do have a board too, right? So it's not just a one to fight.
Yeah, it's not a singular owner. It's a group. It's a company. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm happy for Bobby. I'm happy that he's sticking around for the Raptors, and hopefully that will lead to Masai signing his extension very, very soon. But yeah, with that, that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various podcasting platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, basically wherever you can find a podcast, including YouTube. You can find us with the Up and Under Podcast. Also, check us out on social media, Twitter and Instagram at @N Podcast, Facebook.com/Up and Under Podcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or a reaction to news as they occur, like the Derrick Rose trade, for instance. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so. And also check out our website, upandunderpodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's a place where we also write blog posts for every single episode. So if you don't have time to listen to the full episode or watch the full episode, you can read about it on our website. So definitely check it out there if you haven't done so. And yeah, man, so we're getting to the midpoint of the season. Things are still pretty crazy, man. And
stay tuned for our Eastern All-Star.
Stay tuned. Next episode is going to be the Eastern All-Star, so that's going to be a crazy one, so definitely stay tuned for that one. But yeah, with that, that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.